Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Badger Talks Live. This program brings exciting happenings, resources, and talent from your UW flagship campus to the people of Wisconsin and beyond. My name is Megan Binkley, and I'm originally from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm a first-year graduate student studying in the University of Wisconsin-Madison Anthropology Department. My research focuses on developing scientific methods for identifying ancient craft industries from approximately 250 to 900 CE in central Mexico. I'm using these methods to explore broader questions surrounding identity and social inequality. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I've also begun studying classical Nahuatl, which is the most widely spoken Indigenous language in Mexico, to support future community-based collaborative research centering Indigenous voices and expertise. That being said, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today's talk. We have Gavin Luter, the University Alliance Managing Director, Jessie Conaway, Native Nations Partnership, Nelson Institute, and Earth Partnership, Michelle Cloud, the Indigenous Arts and Sciences Project's co-principal investigator and outreach specialist, and Bethany Redbird, the Ho-Chunk Nation School Community Relations Director. Today, we will be talking about a partnership between the Nelson Institute, the University Alliance, the Village of Waunakee, and the Ho-Chunk Nation. Jessie Conaway's team of students from her Environmental Studies Capstone worked on 6 different projects that promote cultural awareness of the Ho-Chunk people. We will be learning about the work already completed with some of these projects, as well as future plans in development. Now, please welcome University Alliance Director Gavin Luter, who will be kicking off the presentation.
Hey, everyone. Again, my name is Gavin Luter. Really happy to be here. I'm going to talk briefly about what the University Alliance is and what the UniverCity Year program is. We've been happy to be featured on Badger Talks Live this past month. So just to kind of put the pieces together, if we could go to the next slide. So University Alliance is essentially a network of people on campus who want to make UW-Madison resources more accessible to local governments. And we are building face-to-face relationships and trying to break down silos across an incredibly siloed institution like UW-Madison. But the good news is that there are a lot of people who really do want to be making their work more accessible to local governments. And we found those people, and we think now we have an easy way for local governments to tap into those things, and that's called the UniverCity Year program. It's essentially a structured engagement where local government basically says, hey, UW-Madison, we think we need help with project A, B, and C. And then we help them scope out those projects, and then we get them connected with people at UW-Madison, usually through courses that can take those projects on as class projects. So instead of doing hypothetical projects in the classroom, we're trying to do engaged real-world problem solving that students can actually get experiences that are very relevant and can be used even outside when they leave UW-Madison. So one of the groups that applied during the pandemic was the Village of Waunakee, which is a village of about 10,000 people north of Madison by about 20 to 30 minutes, so in Dane County. And they applied essentially around all kinds of diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. After the murder of George Floyd, they realized that they had a lot of learning to do about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so they asked for things like, hey, can you help us do a communications audit to make sure that we're reaching all different groups of people? Can you help us do an ordinance audit to make sure that our laws are not structurally holding down groups that are disproportionately marginalized in society? And one of those projects that they applied for was, hey, we know that we have not done enough work to acknowledge our connection with the land and the indigenous people that occupied this land before we did. And so we want to build closer relationships with the Ho-Chunk Nation. And so, to their credit, they knew that they had a lot of work to do and they were opening themselves up. And so the village president, Chris Zellner, and the village administrator, Todd Schmidt, so kind of a special shout out to them, said, we want to build these relationships. So we actually pulled in a Ho-Chunk Nation member who was a person who works at Waunakee High School, Tim Decora. I believe he was a gym teacher there. And he is a member of the nation and said, look, before we go any further, I want to get the Ho-Chunk Nation leadership involved and see if they'd be willing to support this. And so Tim reached out to President Marlon White Eagle, who's the president of the Ho-Chunk Nation, and said, hey, we Waunakee wants to do this. And President White Eagle, to his credit, said, yes, we think this is a really good thing. And he was willing to dedicate resources. So the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, Bill Quackenbush, Representative Sarah Lemieux, Ryan Greendeer, which is one of their legislative staff people, started to come to monthly leadership meetings where we define projects together. I think that's the most important thing. This is not UW-Madison coming in and saying this is what needs to happen. This is us listening to the community. This is us listening to what needs to happen, especially from the Ho-Chunk Nation perspective. And so to the Village of Waunakee's credit again, they listened to what the Ho-Chunk Nation thought would be very good projects, and they kind of adapted what they were doing to meet these needs. And I thought, hey, the person that I know that does a lot of work around Native nations and was really the pioneer on our campus is Jessie Conaway. And Jessie Conaway teaches an Environmental Studies Capstone class, which she's going to talk about in a second and talk about all the projects that her students did. So that's really how this got to be. That's how we got established. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessie Conaway. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Gavin. And it's wonderful to be working with you. Appreciate that intro and context. Dr. Jessie Conaway here, proudly representing the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies and Earth Partnership, both of UW-Madison. I want to say a special thanks, Pinagigi, to my co-presenters today for joining in and making this a wonderful experience for us all. Also want to greet each of our audience members and welcome you in. We're looking forward to sharing our work. So Gavin, thank you for that intro. For this work that we did in spring 2021, on the slide here, you see the group of students that did this work. This was actually our second UniverCity Year community-based capstone that we worked on together with Ho-Chunk Nation. Our first partnership was with the city of Monona back in 2017, working on cultural education, some of the same goals. Also for that project, we were specifically working on community education and stewardship of effigy mounds in the Monona area, working together with the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, Bill Quackenbush of Ho-Chunk Nation, who came forward as one of our main partners for this work that we did this past spring in 2021 with the Village of Waunakee. This was a powerful partnership, and Gavin shared some of the motivations with you. And so we were building on strong sentiments of wanting to acknowledge Indigenous presence in Dejope, the Four Lake area, and to work together with Ho-Chunk leadership, educators, community members to build out these projects that were going to be of use both to Ho-Chunk Nation, but also to the Village of Waunakee. So I'm going to give you an overview of some of those projects that the students completed in small groups together for their community-based capstone in spring 2021. So we worked, the students worked, you can kind of follow along on these bullets here. We worked on 5 projects in groups that the students made. And then Megan will share her mapping work that she completed as a project for another course that she was taking, but that contributed in a large way to this work with Ho-Chunk Nation and Waunakee. So the projects included land acknowledgement. This was a statement that was built out for Waunakee to use in their trainings, in their municipal buildings, in their promotional materials. And so the education that came about as part of that land acknowledgement connected all of the other projects, because part of the students' work together with Ho-Chunk Leadership, Language Division, and the other membership that I mentioned was seeing that land acknowledgement is not only a statement, it's based in action and education and obligation. And so a group of students built out a land acknowledgement statement, and then we scaffolded under that these other projects that were going to build cultural awareness and cultural responsiveness in partnership with Ho-Chunk Nation for the Village of Waunakee at every level, working with leadership there, working with the library, working with the police department, working with EMS, the schools. So we had a very broad partnership network, both within Ho-Chunk and Waunakee, that really helped to strengthen these projects as a group and individually, and to lay a foundation for ongoing partnership. And we really want to emphasize that today, that this work in this partnership laid a groundwork, but that much more work is needed, more education's needed, more action, more commitment. And so we really see this as a beginning, a really strong start to ongoing work with some of those pathways laid down for the partnership to continue to grow. So moving down this project list, the students also worked on cultural installations. So they designed signage, leveraging Ho-Chunk language and culture for some of the green spaces and the municipal spaces, public spaces within Waunakee. And I have a couple images to show you of those. They worked together with the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer of Ho-Chunk Nation to build out a cultural resources management plan that again would be used by Park and Rec and municipal staff that interface with these green spaces. We did quite a bit of community education. We hosted several public talks via Zoom, hosted by the public library in Waunakee. We invited in Ho-Chunk speakers, and those were open to the public. So we worked on that community education piece. We also worked in, I want to highlight a cultural responsiveness training that we hosted together with Village of Waunakee leadership, and brought in Ho-Chunk elders and experts to help with this training, a professional development opportunity that was attended by people all across the spectrum of the Village of Waunakee. And we also had surrounding townships come into that training as well. And that was also via Zoom. So again, working on cultural education, awareness building, but also that responsiveness piece, learning about the obligation to partner with tribes, and then giving those opportunities for education directly from tribal members to learn how to do that in a good way. I mentioned the mapping project. You're going to hear more about that here in a little bit. And then also the schools education piece. I'm going to turn it over to Megan here shortly, but I wanted to show you a couple images of some of the work that the students did. Lower right, this water is life. This is a sign that the students designed to be used in public spaces in Waunakee. And then upper left is a community education tool. It's a trifold that shares about Ho-Chunk history from the Ho-Chunk perspective, a little bit about clans in there and environmental stewardship. And then kind of sharing some of these guiding principles Again, what made this strong was that the leadership were involved, and we had a large, broad-based representation from both the Village of Waunakee and also Ho-Chunk Nation to guide the students. Our process is about listening and responding. So we engage in feedback loops with community partners with drafts of projects, and everybody weighs in as the students polish their projects. And it's a really good process. Actionable goals and objectives. We want to have tangible deliverables, durable local outcomes at the end of our work together. And we're sharing that with you today. Underlying and driving all of our work is prioritizing Ho-Chunk language and culture revitalization. So this is the backbone of what we do. I'd like to invite in Megan to share her project. Turning the mic over to you, Megan, and welcome in.
Thanks so much, Dr. Conaway. So the goal of this project, the map that you see here, was to create a story map that highlights Ho-Chunk language, culture, and history in Dejope, the Four Lakes area, and in the area of what is now known as the Village of Waunakee. So Waunakee is of particular importance in this situation because of its proximity to several ancestral Ho-Chunk settlement sites. Waunakee is also situated at a critical point in the Yahara watershed. It's the meeting place of the Yahara River and the Dejope Lakes chain. The Yahara watershed and the greater Dejope area have been the homeland of the Ho-Chunk Nation since time immemorial and are irreplaceable components of Ho-Chunk culture, food systems, heritage, and ideologies. So with this in mind, my community partners and I decided to create this map by combining a traditional cartographic workflow with 3 specific techniques for honoring the Ho-Chunk Nation. The first technique was to assert tribal sovereignty through an inset map dedicated to information about the history of the nation and the nation's modern government structure. You can see that inset map down at the bottom there in the darkest blue. This written summary includes an acknowledgement of the fact that the Ho-Chunk Nation has lived in this area since time immemorial, as well as a list of the 12 Ho-Chunk Nation tribes and an acknowledgement of the U.S. federal campaigns of displacement, persecution, and violence directed toward the Ho-Chunk Nation. These campaigns were designed to impose colonial cultural norms and land use approaches on the First Nations and to destroy the Ho-Chunk Nation's ancestral migration routes and relationship with their homeland. So this summary also describes how the Ho-Chunk Nation has survived this persecution and continues to govern some of their areas of their ancestral homeland through a general tribal council and executive, legislative, and judicial government branches. And throughout this summary, we did make a conscious effort to include Ho-Chunk language words. This choice allowed us to honor the Ho-Chunk names for their own institutions and culture. To introduce audience members from outside of the Ho-Chunk Nation to elements of Ho-Chunk language, and to demonstrate how the inclusion of Indigenous languages can and should be normalized in cartographic processes. So the second cultural recognition technique that we used in this map was to use Indigenous place and feature names wherever possible. These names were used in addition to the Ho-Chunk language words that are included throughout the summary. We worked with the Ho-Chunk Nation Language Division and with Mr. Bill Quackenbush to identify and translate place names for the map and to find and use the correct Ho-Chunk language characters. And the third cultural recognition technique we employed was the inclusion of a full oral history account of the creation of Dejope, or the Four Lakes area. So this account is known as Mauna, or the Earthmaker creates Dejope. And the specific version of the story that we included in this map is a replica of the version that was written down in 1942 by archaeologist Charles Brown. The account was told to Charles by Ho-Chunk Nation tribal member John White, and the PDF of the 1942 account that we used was provided by Mr. Quackenbush. And this inclusion of this account provides important historical and cultural context to this map. Now, the map is definitely very visually full, but as Mr. Quackenbush says, sometimes it's best to enjoy story maps slowly over a cup of coffee. And then this project has several important takeaways or kind of macros that can be applied to other cultural historic preservation projects and cartographic projects uplifting Indigenous voices. Specifically, the map demonstrates that oral histories and accounts are a vital component of watershed and environmental data. They're just as valuable to our understanding of the land around us as quantitative data. Secondly, the story maps have particular potential to acknowledge the ways in which stories and oral histories and language are a part of land and water data. And in some ways, story maps are ideal platforms for blending complementary qualitative and quantitative data into a final cohesive product. And then third, that cartographic labels, particularly the labels of natural places and geographic features, are fantastic opportunities for centering First Nations voices and culture in mapping projects.
Thank you, Megan. Nice work. Good to be with you today. What a beautiful map. I'd like to invite in our education group who's joining in, representing Ho-Chunk Nation, inviting in Bethany and Michelle to share, to kind of hone in on the student work together with Ho-Chunk Nation and the school district of Waunakee on the school's education project. Michelle and Bethany, passing the mic to you.
Thanks, Jessie. So my name is Bethany Redbird. I'm the School Community Relations Director, and I'll let Michelle introduce herself again, just in case.
Thank you, Bethany. I greet each one of you. Hump Day, Hanichawida Haipi. It's good to see you all today. Ho-Chunk Rajara Hinukajaide Hingaide. My Ho-Chunk spirit name is Hinukajaide, which means a woman to be seen. Hunchi Kikara Chija Waunakee, and I am a member of the Bear Clan. I'm happy to be here, and thank you, Bethany.
Sure, thanks, Michelle. So we met with some members of the school district of Waunakee to talk about culturally responsive professional development opportunities. And so they were talking about, Jessie mentioned the oral history. We talked about place-based learning opportunities. And so we plan on doing a series of PD as far as I recall. It's been a little bit since we did that, but we did start a 3-hour PD opportunity for the district educators back in June. If you want to skip to the next slide, please, Jess. So we called it Culturally Responsive Education PD. So we went over the history of Act 31, which, as many of you know, is an integral part of Wisconsin history and teacher licensure here in Wisconsin. We talked about being culturally relevant and responsive in your pedagogy. We talked about the history of the Ho-Chunk Nation, the clans and their kinship and how important those are to Ho-Chunk people. We talked about removals, things that many of these educators had no clue about, but we need to talk about. We couldn't go into extensive detail about it, but just introducing them to just some concepts they were not familiar with before. We also talked about inequalities in 20th century schooling, particular, eugenic policies of the United States government, genocide of Native peoples, and also in particular Ho-Chunk boarding schools that many Ho-Chunk members went to. We wanted the teachers to be aware that these things had happened, and why we don't see a lot of it in schools, we need to. And so we encourage them to incorporate some pieces of this into their pedagogy so that their students learn from the get-go, 4th, 8th, whatever grades, what's happened in Wisconsin. Go ahead to the next one, Jess.
And we wanted to focus on our relationship with between the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Black River Falls School District. So historically, there was a contentious relationship. A lot of discrimination and racism exists in our community here in Black River Falls. From the mid-2000s to the present, we do have a very large population of Ho-Chunk students in the Black River Falls School District. We comprise nearly 25% of the school population is Ho-Chunk. And unfortunately, things had come to a head over a busing issue. And so us parents of Native students filed a discrimination claim with the Office of Civil Rights with the U.S. Department of Education. We went through extensive mediation, issues surrounding truancy, expulsion, special ed designation, busing issues, athletics, tutoring. The list was very extensive. So we, at the end of all of that, forged a collaborative relationship between the nation and the Black River Falls School District. And I want to make sure that you understand that we had the support of the Ho-Chunk Nation president, Wilfred Cleveland, at the time. And it was not only the education department staff that was involved, but it was also the Department of Social Services, because we had also forged a relationship with the Jackson County Department of Health and Human Services with regard to students of child protection cases. So it's actually a work in progress. We feel like it's just a jumping off point to continue our collaboration, and we strive to understand one another. There's so many positive changes that have been made, and we are really excited about continuing that partnership even today. And so I want to just briefly mention that the mediation culminated in a memorandum of understanding between the nation and the Black River Falls School District. Next slide, please, Jess. And here's a couple of pages of it, the first and the last page. So there's actually 8 pages of it. So I just want to let you know that it was fully endorsed by the Ho-Chunk Nation, all of us as the parent committee and the president, as well as the school board of the Black River Falls district, and also signed off by the United States Department of Justice. Next slide.
Thank you, Michelle. So the reason we talked about Black River specifically is not just because we're located in Black River, but because it's an effort that all school districts can go under. It's not just because they had 25%. It doesn't matter if they have 25% Ho-Chunk students. It doesn't matter if they have any Ho-Chunk students. This is still a collaboration that we can assist with, and we want to. We want to help whoever is interested, and we're hoping we have more and more school districts reach out to us because it's extremely important. And so we offer a few other teacher education efforts that I wanted to focus on, but I did want to mention that the reason we talked with them about Black River was because it came to such an important point. It went from a very contentious relationship to a collaboration, and it continues to be a collaboration, and things don't happen overnight. This has been a decade in the making. So things don't just snap to and everything works out. We have to all work on it together, and it's very important that educators understand that as well. So we also provide teacher tours for school districts. We offer tours of the nation and outdoor areas. We continue to do monthly meetings with districts like Nakusa, Wisconsin Rapids, Port Edwards, and Baraboo. We have social equity meetings. We also, Michelle and I also facilitate a group for seeking educational equity and diversity, also known as SEED groups. And we do offer these to other districts as well. They just need to show us interest, and we can discuss, scheduling and things like that. It's another professional development opportunity for teachers. We also have the Indigenous Arts and Sciences Institute, run by Earth Partnership of UW-Madison in collaboration with the Ho-Chunk Nation, as well as Bad River, Lac du Flambeau, Red Cliff, and I think that's it, right? We also do teacher PD, like I mentioned, and we continue to do action planning and implementation. So we talk about all these things we can do, but where do we begin with action planning? Where do we begin with the implementation? We can assist with a lot of this, but the district itself is who has to start with the implementation and the action planning. So we can assist along the way, and we're more than happy to do so, but we do expect the district to take responsibility and begin actually action planning. Go ahead. So I think right now we're just going to kind of talk about some questions and some issues we faced in the past, how we've gone through some macros. Jess, if you want to talk a little bit about.
Sure. I had a quick question here before we close this out, though. Bethany and Michelle, your work with the Black River Falls School District, how did that guide what you landed on doing with Waunakee Schools? Can you talk a little bit about that, and then I'll pull this slide down and we'll go to the next piece. But I wanted to hear kind of with this long, arduous experience that you had, how that kind of guided your work that you did together with Tim Schell for professional development for Waunakee Schools.
Thank you, Jess. I can talk about that. We had a lot of lessons learned in our relationship and collaboration with between the nation and the Black River Falls School District. So we wanted to share what our experience was and how what we learned can be of value to other school districts. We want to be able to share those lessons learned, so we can we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, and we can start at a better place and more advanced place, and create a really healthy, positive collaboration with Waunakee School District. Bethany?
I can't say it any better than you did. I think that, you know, like Michelle said, we've learned from mistakes, and we've worked with other districts as well. But I think, you know, Black River is a really positive model. And again, we continue to build, and it's been a decade. So we have to make it very clear that things don't happen overnight, but also make it clear that whether you have a population of Native students or not, that doesn't matter. This can still happen, and it's still very important. So I think we just worked through, you know, pieces that everyone may have struggled through, what we wanted to focus on in 3 hours, because that's not much time to talk about a lot of things, and just pinpoint some of the things that we thought maybe they would have questions on, and then continue to build that relationship as we continue to do PD.
Yeah. Thank you, Bethany, Michelle. So good to be with you today, and thank you for sharing this. I want to echo what you said, Michelle, about we want to start at a more advanced place. This has been one of my guiding principles in my work in tribal university partnerships across all the projects that I work in. And we've all heard this before, but I just want to highlight that we're building these relationships. We're learning a lot. We have demonstrated success, and we want to continue to build on that and not keep starting over. We don't need new initiatives that are starting over. We need new initiatives that are building on the work that's been done, and coming in, like Michelle said, from an advanced place, from an educated place, and from a place of building on alliances that are established in a good way. And so thank you for that. We have kind of wanted to reflect together on some of the macro kind of objectives that came out of this project. And so I want to invite in folks for Michelle, Bethany, Megan, for discussion to kind of share with our audience what were some of the big takeaways from this work together with Ho-Chunk Nation, Village of Waunakee, UniverCity Year, and the Nelson Institute. Would like to invite folks to share reflections on that, some of the major takeaways. Just jump in.
So thanks, Jess. I'd like to jump in on that and just let you know that I think the major takeaway for me personally was not only to be in a good place with Waunakee, but to share that what is possible. And it doesn't have to be, like Bethany said, to have a large Native population of students within their school district. We did focus also on Act 31, like Bethany had mentioned, and that's required for all educators across the state of Wisconsin. And so I think that understanding that and bringing what we have learned to the table, to our conversation with Waunakee, was something that was new to them, that they hadn't heard a lot of what we had shared with them. So that was the biggest takeaway for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think my biggest takeaway, Jess, was that we can show them other opportunities they may have to expand on PD. Obviously, it's not just us, right? But there are so many opportunities through, Indigenous arts and sciences, SEED, equity meetings, things like that teachers don't know about. David O'Connor and the network and things like this that we need to make sure teachers understand. A lot of those trainings are free. And I know that teachers are bombarded with training opportunities. I get that. But it's really important to take that time and go to some of these because they are fantastic and just invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I like what we're saying here about, with cultural education, cultural responsiveness. This is good for all people. This is good for Native students. It's good for non-Native students to have these opportunities. It's good for Native educators, non-Native educators. And so really kind of raising that awareness that this benefits the whole community and is necessary. Thank you, ladies. Megan, did you want to share a reflection of one of your big takeaways?
Absolutely, I'd love to. And my reflection echoes things that you've all been saying. As a student who participated in Dr. Conaway's capstone class, the thing that struck me the most was that there's room for everyone coming from different types of disciplines to participate in these community education efforts. You know, my classmates and I, we came from such a diverse range of disciplinary backgrounds and experiential backgrounds, and we were all able to find a way to apply our unique skill sets to the projects at hand, and we all learned an immense amount that applies to future individual efforts as well. So even if, you know, for our audience members, if you're an individual thinking, oh, I would like to get involved in these projects, but I don't think that the skill sets I've developed, you know, will lend themselves well to community education, you know, a conversation can be a good start. And you can find a way to blend your life experiences into these projects and these efforts.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you, ladies. Kind of moving along here, we wanted to have a chance to talk about some of the challenges of this work, so let's speak frankly. What are some of the challenges that folks came in, that folks experienced in this type of partnership with Ho-Chunk and Waunakee? Anyone want to jump in?
So I think one of the challenges is time. Time is a big factor in any kind of professional development, any kind of collaboration, and not everybody has a lot of time, right? But again, I can't stress enough how important this work is. Everyone has talked about it. I know I keep repeating myself, but it's so important. And so people have to make time. Everyone is busy. And I know that, especially, you know, we were talking with teachers and they are so, like I mentioned earlier, bogged down. We also talked about the fact that it doesn't have to be a social studies or a history teacher that does all this work. It needs to be all subjects, science, math, reading, everything. It doesn't have to just be one subject. And I think people get stuck on that, thinking historically, and they don't need to, because they need to be thinking present as well. And so I think that the lack of time, it's not a lack of commitment necessarily, but when I mentioned earlier about action planning, you know, we can lead the horse to water, but then they have to drink. And so we kind of can help, but then we need to see some action planning after that, because we can't help every single step, but we know that we can help a little bit. And so just actually putting, you know, what we talk about into action and seeing results. That's what it can be really difficult as far as, you know, like I said, time is the biggest factor in any of this. At least my personal belief is time, because not everybody has a lot of it, but it's still so important to do.
Thanks, Bethany. Michelle Cloud, anything to add? Challenges?
Yeah, I think that perhaps one of the challenges that may be a positive is the fact that some of the educators had not heard about any of these efforts that we were bringing to them, and understanding what is possible through the education department and how much services that we do offer to families and to our youth, and for them to be able to grow individually, not only professionally, but individually. And I think that that's also a strength, because they can really jump in and delve into the learning that we offer, culturally responsive education efforts that we do, that is really in a systemic way throughout the whole district. And that was a message that Bethany and I shared with our presentation over the summer with Waunakee, was how we're going to make these changes, and how, you know, again, lessons learned. We needed to make these changes systemic so that it would be wide reaching and everyone would be positively affected by what we've been offering. So
yeah. Pina, Gigi, Michelle, good to hear. Megan, challenges, cartographic challenges or other? Turning the mic over to you, Megan.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the challenges that I encountered, and I think several of my peers encountered as well, was feeling a little stumped on how to continue our engagement with these projects and these efforts after the end of the semester. because in class we have these amazing opportunities built into our schedules. And, as Bethany was saying, it's this time aspect, but I've seen several of my peers from the capstone course continue the themes that we learned about in the capstone into jobs, into internships, into other coursework, and into new projects that they're designing and they're building. So there's a ripple effect that we didn't necessarily anticipate, but has been really powerful. Well, really, really powerful to see, and to see how it's manifesting in a bunch of different spheres.
Excellent, Megan, well said. And along these lines, Megan and then her peer, Alina, both continued this work funded by the Mortgage Center and UniverCity Year to do summer and fall internships to continue out this work. So that's really good to hear. We have a couple more minutes here. I wanted to, we talked about how this partnership is laying groundwork. It's a series of first steps. We want to encourage our project team members, encourage our audience to continue to seek out education about these efforts. And I'd like to take a couple minutes here before we go to audience Q&A. I'd like to take a couple minutes to invite our presenters to share what you see as next steps for the work with Ho-Chunk and Waunakee, either stuff that's in action or stuff you would like to see coming down the line. So Michelle, you want to start us off, lady?
Sure. Again, to continue the theme of systemic changes is for Waunakee to commit to the work that is available and that would benefit everyone within the school district, starting with the school board, through the administrators and down to the teachers and the staff and the lunch lady and the bus driver. And I think that just having that understanding and having that commitment to these things that are that we're offering is really as far as I'm concerned, is the next step. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. So ongoing education, ongoing professional development opportunities provided not only to educators, but across district staff and leadership. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Pinagigi. Bethany, you want to add next steps?
I can't add much more than Michelle did because I completely agree. I think that whether you're a community member or any staff of any school district, there are plenty of opportunities. And if you don't know of them, we can certainly give you our contact information and we can certainly try and help. Reaching out, reaching out to the tribal members, tribal resources. I know it can be intimidating to some people, but I think that people want to help. I know in the education department, we want to help our families, we want to help our students. We also want to help their teachers. That's who teaches our students. So we are more than willing to help with additional professional development. We can also suggest other trainings. I mentioned earlier DPI, Wisconsin DPI, David O'Connor, also the network trainings, Indigenous Arts and Sciences, just a plethora of different PD opportunities that don't take a lot of time, but can be so impactful. But that systemic change, like Michelle mentioned, is just the most important piece.
Yes, ma'am. Decolonizing education from the ground up. We work on this in Academy as well at UW. This is work that we're doing every day. And as we mentioned, benefits tribal students and tribal public, and also non-tribal students and non-tribal public. So before we go to Q&A, Megan, did you want to add anything in for next steps for your map or any of the work that you did together with the other students for this coursework?
Absolutely. From a cartographic perspective, one of my personal favorite aspects of the map was it offers a glimpse of ancestral Ho-Chunk travel routes and highways through Wisconsin. This was a data layer that we created as part of my internship, and these routes, they span the entire state. And so I think in the future, expanding the mapping efforts to document these travel routes and include them in additional story maps that can then be used as education tools in the classroom, in non-classroom community settings. That would be the next step that I see.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michelle Cloud, Pinagigi, Bethany Redbird, Megan Binkley, Gavin Luter. Good to be together today, proudly sharing this this project that brings together so many powerful partners, and it's an honor to be able to be together with you all sharing about this effort. I'd like to welcome in Fran. Fran, I think we're ready for Q&A, if you're ready for us.
Excellent, thank you. And I just want to say also how impactful and impressive this project is. We've showcased a lot of different projects, including others with UniverCity Alliance, and the impact of this particular project is so far-reaching and impacts so many different audiences. So thank you so much to all of you for sharing today. We have a lot of questions. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them. And we have
goody.
A great number of people tuning in, so lots of interest. I'm going to share some comments first of all. Todd Schmidt, who you probably all know, was tuning in and said, glad to be watching from the only Waunakee in the world. The village greatly enjoyed our partnership on this project. Our new relationship with Ho-Chunk Nation is something we value in big ways. Tom Wilson said, our future is in good hands with young people like those involved with this project. Simply awesome work. Jeff Scott, awesome work. Love the cooperative nature between the city and the nation. Hi, Jessie from Ilana, Xander, and Mirabel. So lots of questions about the map. How can they access the map online? So that question maybe goes to Megan, huh?
Absolutely. Thank you, Fran. I'm going to pull Dr. Conaway in on this one as well. You know, after completing the map, we turned it over, we passed it along to Mr. Quackenbush of the Ho-Chunk Nation and Dr. Conaway. And so this is something that I think Mr. Quackenbush would be in charge of, you know, kind of overseeing the distribution of the map. But Dr. Conaway, maybe you can expand on that process a bit.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Megan. Thanks, Fran. I know that Megan has posted her work. That's posted on a website, right, Megan? Or not yet?
Not yet, but it certainly can be.
Okay, so what we did with Megan's map and with all the projects was in May for most of the projects, and then for Megan's map that happened in September. We shared that with Village of Waunakee and Ho-Chunk Nation project partners for them to continue to utilize the documents, the templates, all of the different pieces of this cultural education work that the students completed. So we can loop back about where that's posted. But all of the projects are for use by Ho-Chunk Nation and Village of Waunakee. So they can use those in websites and for education and are charged with the distribution. So more on that to come.
Is there a website that people can reference relating to a lot of these different projects, Jessie? Or
I would call in Todd Schmidt from our audience and ask. I'm guessing that they have used these in their city website, but
well, let me also say that there is actually we did post Megan's map on a website. Fran, I'm going to put this in the chat, and I'm hoping that maybe you can post this. We do have a website that we keep all of the Village of Waunakee projects up to date. It is basically, if you go on our website, university.wisc.edu/Waunakee, that I've also put that in the chat. But on there is any deliverable that we ever do for any local government, we generally post here on our website under the specific, page that is that city, county, town, village. So you can find that on our main website. But yes, we did post Megan's map and it is on there. And so Fran, I'm hoping that you can get that out to the audience watching.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Kevin. It's posted on both YouTube and Facebook in the chat now, so please look for it there. And Todd did chime in. The Village of Waunakee will anticipate posting the map and other related info on our website too. Not up yet, but we will. So
Okay, great. Good to hear. Thank you, Fran.
yeah, you betcha. Okay, let me get back to the list. So Kieran Furlong, and I think this is sort of what we were hoping for with this presentation, says, what a great project. Would love to explore doing something like this in Middleton, Wisconsin. I'll be in touch.
Good. And thank you. Thank you for that comment. And I know that the city of Middleton did join in with Village of Waunakee leadership staff across all those sectors that I mentioned earlier. City of Middleton was invited in and sent, I think, 10 or 12 people.
Yeah, and I think, Jessie, you're 100% right. And Kieran, if you're listening, I know Kieran. I think Mike Davis, who is the city administrator, was involved in that training, although I think he's soon to retire. So we'd absolutely love to get Middleton more engaged, and I would love for Middleton to apply to UniverCity Year and make this their project. And now we have some good connections, and we've kind of greased the skids, and we can make it a little bit easier next time.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit about a capstone course and what that is? I don't know that everybody knows exactly what that means. Is it undergraduate? Is it graduate? Is it open to all students? How does that work?
Yes, so I'm with the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. So environmental studies undergraduates are required to complete a capstone course for their major. And all environmental studies majors at UW-Madison are all double majors. So Megan was talking about how the students come in with a common thread of environmental studies, but then they have this other major that they're interested in. And so the capstone is meant, it's designed to be an integrative learning experience that brings in, and Megan talked about this in a good way, so she kind of gave a good summary of kind of what goes into that integrative learning experience that each of these environmental studies undergrads are required to complete. So most of them are juniors and seniors. This capstone brings in life experiences. It's asking them to leverage what they've learned in other courses and in other disciplines, and to bring that to this summative experience for their capstone. And for me, as an experiential educator, the opportunity to work in partnership with tribal nations for these capstone courses is a humongous transformative experience for these undergraduate students. I've done this, these capstones together with tribal nations. 2022 will be my ninth year partnering undergraduate students together with tribal nations to complete projects for the tribes. Usually they're in environmental conservation or community education. And this is we actually did some research on this community-based learning with Native nations on a group of undergrads for a semester. And these students are having transformative experiences that really integrate their life and learning. And I've had a few students change their life path because of this capstone. They decide that they want to work with tribes, they want to go into tribal law, they want to be, they want to work in tribal natural resources. So this has had some really big impacts. And so it's been a great opportunity to be a part of this. And I'll be doing this again in spring of 2022. And that'll be number 9. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, Fran, I also just want to get in and say that the capstone experience is a very common experience across all different kinds of academic disciplines. Usually it's some sort of a summative kind of final experience that a student has to put all the knowledge together that they've learned in their academic career into one class. And if I have it my way, more people at UW-Madison will be using real-world community-based learning experiences as their capstone experiences and not doing it with some sort of a hypothetical project. So, you know, with hopefully the help of this platform, Badger Talks Live, we can certainly get more momentum going to kind of say that this is more of an expectation that UW-Madison has to make this a real world experiential learning, you know, expectation.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry we weren't able to address every question posted out there, but we will circle back and get those questions answered after the live stream is ended. That chat will stay out there, as will this recording for the foreseeable future. So I just want to thank everybody so much. Bethany, Michelle, Jessie, Megan, and Gavin. Thank you so much for sharing this with our audience today. Lots of questions, lots of engagement. Keep up.
Hey, Fran, before you end, I just want to make sure that the audience knows that this project is ongoing. We actually have a project going on next semester with the Village of Waunakee and the Bolt Center for Arts Administration. They're working on a public art strategy for Waunakee, where we could actually take some of what the students did, make them permanent installations, but also work with Ho-Chunk Nation artists. So we're doing that with the Bolt Center currently with the, I mean, Bill Quackenbush is involved still. And so I don't know, we just really want more and more activities to come from this. So I want people to know this is not just done. This is ongoing, and hopefully, as Todd has mentioned, this is the beginning of their relationship.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like we're going to have y'all back for a future episode, and we can circle back on how the project has continued and hopefully multiplied in other areas as well. Thank you,
Fran.
everybody, today for joining us. Really appreciate it. So that concludes our University Alliance focus for the month. But as we said, hopefully they'll be coming back in the near future. Please join us, though, next Tuesday, December 7th at noon. We're going to be talking to Susan Carpenter, who's with UW Arboretum, and she's going to be talking about gardening with native plants. Great time to be thinking about the plans for that spring garden. She's given that talk around the state at various locations, and it's always very popular. So we're bringing her back for the live stream so everybody can see it, and it'll be out there available for future reference. Please visit us at badgertalks.wisc.edu. You can check out our podcast with Ben Rush, where we have little interviews with upcoming speakers. You can get sneak previews into future talks, and he's actually already talked with Susan, and that podcast is out there for next week. Also see the upcoming schedule of live talks. We're going to be posting the spring schedule of live events here probably in mid-December, so be watching for that. Sign up for our email list. Consider a donation to Badger Talks. We are supported by a grant. And then also search the roster of over 400 UW faculty and staff who are generously donating their time to give virtual and in-person talks around the state in communities like yours on topics that are important to you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.